Welcome everyone to the Adversity to Advantage podcast. It's been quite a day for me. I've been rushing all around, but I'm so pleased because we've just had a pre-warm-up talk with Gavin Johnson. He was introduced to me by his auntie, actually, who was on the podcast a little while ago. She talked about sound therapy, which was fascinating. I've been to a few of her little sessions, which was very cool to learn about vibrations and all the rest of it. Now you're an athlete. You sound like you're a guy who does a lot of stuff. So you're an athlete. I know you're training as a coach, and it seems like you've used COVID-19 to almost reinvent yourself like 1,000 times. Welcome to the show. Tell us a bit about you.
Thank you for having me. I took this as an opportunity. I always try to use my time in the most effective way possible. And I had the goal of coming out of COVID-19 or the pandemic better than I went in. That was my goal. So I went into it, had time off work because I work as a personal trainer part-time as well as being an athlete. It just sort of married together. It wasn't a career choice that I wanted to specifically go into, but it just fell into it, and it just fit nicely. And I'm working with a great team, and I love the atmosphere there. But I also had other interests. I've always been interested in psychology and sociology and things like that. And I studied economics at university, and I wish I did PPE, which is politics, philosophy, and economics, which combines all of those topics together. But that's just what happened. So I just was reading a lot of stuff around it as I was going through, and it helped in the personal training because, as you know, a lot of people use those sessions as a bit of a therapy session as well. So as I was doing that, I was developing my skills, understanding different types of people that come to me, coming from all different types of walks of life and things like that. So I decided during the pandemic, I went on Udemy. There was like a course there for £15 down from 200. And it was life coaching. So I just thought, this is a sign. Let me just jump on it. Started watching it. Absolutely loved the tutor, Kane Ramsey. He's very, very good at what he does. And it just inspired me to write 3 books. So I got down.
Not one, people, but 3. Anyone else, you're slacking. Yeah, you wrote 3 books.
Yeah, I mean, they're not massive books. They're quite short and punchy, but they, trimmed all the fat. It was straight to the point type of books.
What were the themes? What are the themes of the books?
The first one is,
let's have a look.
There we go. I don't know,
a little book of empowerment. Love it.
Book of empowerment. Basically, it gives you the sort of tools you need to feel empowered and to get out and achieve your goals. So we're looking at the language that you use. That's very important. So the way you describe yourself, the way you respond to people, and how you just basically use your language, and the amount of vocabulary that you do have also contributes to your visualizations, because the more descriptive you can be with the more colorful language, the more real it becomes. And once it becomes real, you attach a stronger emotional attachment to it, and then you're more compelled to actually act upon it. And you've been through it, so it's just about going through the motions. So the more you visualize it, the less sort of nervous you are and doubtful you are, because you've been through it already, and then it just comes to just actually doing it. So it's just all about that, taking responsibility for your actions, making sure that you're aware of yourself through taking responsibility of those things, obviously taking action, asking yourself the right types of questions, because people often don't ask themselves the right type of questions and get themselves into a bit of a mess. And just things like that. So it just gives you a real structure on how to get to a stage where you can actually get out. Yeah, get out and actually do something for yourself.
I love it. And I'm curious about, and I know there's 2 other books, and we'll get to those, but you said you were determined to get out of the pandemic better than you went in. I think you said something like that. Yes. Now, was that are you so well versed in this and so kind of super ninja trained that was your immediate thought? Or, like many of us, did you go through a bit of a holy fuck, kind of, destabilizing, and then you switched it up?
No. I mean, my lifestyle hasn't changed much since the pandemic. I'm not massively at this stage in my life. I'm not going out very much. I'm not doing all those types of things. I literally go to work, train, come home, and work on the various different things that I'm working on. So it wasn't too much of a difference, to be honest with you. So there was no real shock. I just got really excited, to be honest with you, because I had all this free time. And I realized how, I noticed a long time ago when I was at university that 24 hours is a very long time, because when you're doing your degree, you've got so much time, and this is one of the biggest struggles as a university student, is to actually manage your time, because I've got a little theory with the education system where you've got the GCSEs where it helps you to multitask because you've got lots of different subjects, not in too much detail. Then you A levels is when you really have to just work your butt off, really focus and really work hard. And university is about time management. So once you've gained all those three, you're able to really go out.
And independence, isn't it?
Yeah,
so time management, and all the lifestyle stuff that you have to add on.
Exactly. Because, you know, the lectures don't take up that much of your time. If you're on, you know, if you're doing your work and you're doing everything on schedule, it doesn't really take up that much of your time, or it doesn't have to. So, yeah, I just was given the gift of going back to university, it seems. So I just thought, let me just throw myself into lots of stuff that I've always wanted to do. And yeah, I just started the life coaching course, started talking to various different people, built up lots of stuff, and then wrote those 3 books. Then more recently, in the last few weeks, I started up my own podcast with a friend of mine. We just got in touch just randomly and just decided to do it. And also started to paint a lot more. So I've been doing lots of abstract art, big pieces, and people have been expressing interest to buy it. So again, I thought, let's just make some more, and if people continue liking it, then why not?
Now talk us through who you were as a young boy, as a young man. Like, were you always set for being an athlete? Were you always focused? I know some of your family is quite driven and talented, but like, what was that environment, and did it sort of direct you into that path, I guess?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I think it's a combination of who I guess I am as naturally, and the influences in my family. It's a combination. So I was born in New York, and I was raised there, and I was born in the Bronx and then raised in Lower Manhattan for a few years. Then I moved back to London. My dad was, he was very much into sport. So he would take me out even as a 1 or 2 year old and get me to do pull-ups in the park, all sorts of crazy stuff.
Really?
I got the pictures of it. Yeah. So sports was always a big thing for me growing up. I always wanted to be big and muscular, and Incredible Hulk and all those types of things were very big idols of mine. So sport was something that I was always.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say the Incredible Hulk was an idol of mine.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I've got posters of him all over the place. No, you know, and at the same time, I was very artistic as well. So I would always be drawing pictures of like Godzilla and all these sort of sci-fi things. So I have a big thing for sci-fi. So I was always doing those types of things. And as I got older, it just sort of developed more and more and more. And, you know, as I went through to school, I was made sports captain all the way up until I was 18, until I left as prefect and all the rest of it. I was in every single sports team. I was doing lots of arts. Yeah, I was just, you know, the school that I went to in terms of secondary school, they kind of bred people to be multi-talented in lots of different areas. I went to haberdashers, and it's only when I left I realized actually this is not so normal, because I was just used to everyone being great at art, great at sports. Like we had European champions, sprinters and Olympians and stuff like this in my class. We had the sons of like professional footballers, Scott Parker, Sean Wright Phillips. We went to school with all these guys. So we're just used to seeing the highest level of stuff, and we just sort of almost took it for granted.
Because it does sound quite balanced for like a man as well, to both be the athlete and achieving there and be in the arts. You know, sometimes there's this divide, isn't there?
Yeah, people like to put people into boxes and see these massive divides, and actually it's not true. There is an Olympic committee of artists. There's a lot of javelin throwers, which is my discipline, that are very, very good artists. You know, because you got to understand, when you, especially with track and field, I mean, each sport's different, but with track and field, you need to have a particular mentality. It's very, very hard, and it's very technical, and you have to have almost like an OCD type of personality. So you get certain professions with certain events and certain people doing certain things. But yeah, it's something that's purely physical, but at the same time, you build up this certain type of work ethic, and also you need other things as well to balance you, as you say. So lots of people are very surprised when they see, oh, you're this athlete guy, and then you do art as well. And it's like, it's not actually that uncommon, if you just say. And I just think, and at the same time, I've got an attitude of why not? If I see something, why not? Let me just do it.
So do you think, and I know that like team sport and sport often builds that resilience of like, you win some, you lose some, you get back up, you keep trying. But do you have any moments that you remember, like your first big fails, or like it was a proper blow?
Yeah. There's plenty of times. Yeah. I mean, even from a young age, you know, there's lots of times when you get injured, when you want to really try, like for example, like when I got back from university, decided to focus on track and field because I was doing a lot of rugby and a lot of more contact team sports, and I realized that I'm more of a solo guy. So I went straight into athletics, quite arrogant, thought I was big and strong, I'm going to be world champion in a couple of years, and then I got hit with every single injury in the book. And that was just incredibly painful. Being on the sidelines, knowing you want to do something, seeing everybody else improve, but knowing you can't do anything about it. You know, there would be times when I'd come away from training in tears because it's just like, if someone's ripping us off, you've dedicated so much time, you spent so much money, do everything to make this happen, and it's just not working for you. But at the same time, you have this belief that you can do something in the sport. So I continue.
Where does that come from? That belief that you can achieve something?
I don't know. I've just always had it. Even from when I was young, my grandmother and all those people would say that I was just incredibly determined. Nobody could tell me no. I just would always just plow through it, no matter what was put in front of me. If I decided I was going to do something, that was it. So I guess it's just something natural in me, I guess, but then reinforced because I've had a lot of successes as well. So I know I've got a track record of being successful in certain things. But at the same time, I understand that when you do fail, it's just a moment. It's not permanent. It doesn't define you as a person. It's just a moment for you to learn, to reassess, to do better next time. And that's what sports, from doing it from a young age, is. You know, you may win round one, but you better bring it for me because I'm coming back for round two. That's always been my mentality. Okay, good, you won it. Next time,
I'm in. Yeah, there's a competitive edge. Watch
out.
out.
I'm incredibly competitive, and that's what keeps me going. And I know that I've gone so far. Like even last season, where I've had the most successful season I've ever had, I had a massive breakdown with my coach. I called him up before a training session because he's quite a harsh guy, and I like it because it's just straight to the point. Yeah. But I was just at a state where I just thought, I'm not making the improvements that I want to. Everyone around me is doing their own thing, living a normal life. I'm making massive sacrifices. I don't have as much money as all my friends because they're all investment bankers now. So they're earning 200, 300 grand a year, easy plus bonus. So they're having a great time. And I'm just sort of the poor friend trying to sort of make his way through track and field athletics at my age, because I'm 37 now. And so it was a big struggle when I got to a real sort of breaking point, and I told him I was going to quit.
Did you?
And yeah, I was done. I was in my head. I was done. I told all my close friends, I'm done with this. You know, I really went full dramatic.
What came just before that?
Before that, because what happened was, you know, I was training really well. I had a pretty good season the season before. I took on a new coach called Francis Gross, who's a very, very good German coach in the javelin. Yeah, one of his athletes just won the world championships for the decathlon. He's like 19 years old, the youngest ever. So he's a very good coach. And he's, you know, lots of coaches seen a lot of potential in me, but because of my age and all the rest of it, it becomes quite sort of limiting in a way. So he came on board. He was giving us lots of stuff. Everything was going well until I actually went outside and started throwing the javelin, and then I saw there wasn't very much improvement, and I was just like, you know, it just crushes you, because in your head, before you actually go outside, you can create all sorts of fantasies in your mind of how far it's going to go and all the rest of it. And then when you're actually there, that's the cruel thing about sports. You can't hide the result. It's there, black and white. No one cares whether you didn't sleep well, whether you had broke up with your girlfriend, whatever. That's it. It's
just that end result. You're only as good as that last thing. Yeah,
exactly. And I'm very real and I'm very harsh on myself. So I was just like, I'm wasting my time, blah, blah, blah. My coach was just like, no, you're not quitting. Just you get your butt down to the training track. And I did, and I had an incredible session. And then I said, look, okay, I'm just going to play it week by week, you know, because the reality is I can't walk away. It's become part of my identity. So as much as I, you know, make dramatic scenes and, you know, say I'm going to be finished,
I've had enough.
I can't actually do it. So I went through it. Season was good, and I ended up basically winning everything. I won the English Championships. I'm current English champion. Won the Manchester International, came third in the British Championships, finished fourth in the country. You know, it was just an incredible position, got a new personal best. Everything was great. And it was just one of those moments where if I just said no, I would have missed out on everything.
Now, I have a theory that for many of us, we do, just like in your example, we do our greatest work when right after we had those meltdowns. I remember when I first started the podcast and we were almost 2 years in, weekly episodes, haven't missed one. And I remember listening to podcasts and thinking, I've always wanted to do that. I want to do it. And I just had this dream. I was still employed, so I wasn't in a successful business, which I am now, like it's all grown. And I just set this up from my living room table. And I did, GarageBand, and I was editing myself, YouTubing, how to, edit your own podcast and all the rest of it. So I had my first conversation and then I edited it. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm trying to have this big voice on a big platform. And I just have this dream that I want people to learn about mindset in the messy middle. And I want to be like some of those people that I listen to. I had such a meltdown in my kitchen all alone.
Oh.
Yeah, I was just like, fuck, nobody's going to listen to it. What am I doing? The whole imposter thing.
Yeah.
And then once it's out, like sometimes you feel vulnerability, but you start getting the kind of feedback loop from people going, oh my God, that thing really helped me, or it changed my life, or, all that stuff.
Yeah. Totally.
And it's just that people quit right then sometimes, right then. But how do you know, and you may not know the answer to this. I've recently watched the Rocky series with my boyfriend because he was like, you got to watch this. And it's like, how do you know? Because there were times when he like shouldn't be fighting anymore. And he's just like, I'm a fighter. That's just who I am. I have to do it. But how do people know when it's like, we've got to actually sometimes quit in order to focus on the better thing? And when it's those moments.
It's just that I think it just comes down to how much you really want the thing, and the sort of your visualization of who you are and what represents you as a person and your identity. If your identity has been assigned to this particular goal, like you want to have a successful podcast, you're going to find it very difficult to walk away from it because that's what represents you as a person. If you do find yourself walking away, then you may have to ask yourself what you really, really want. Because when you really, really want something, I believe it's incredibly difficult to walk away. Incredibly difficult.
I'm with you. It's really hard to explain drive, like almost stupid to the point of stupidity, to people who don't have it.
Yeah, and it's it's the same quality that a lot of entrepreneurs have. They get knocked down, get knocked down, but then that one thing happens. Just like, for example, with the athletics again, you get a lot of problems. I don't have as much disposable income as other people. I can't go out as much. I've got a lot of restrictions, which I don't actually mind. But then when I win a medal, when I stand up on that podium, it's all worth it. It counts for everything. It means everything. And then I see little kids coming up to me, asking for my autograph, taking pictures of me. I get to coach them, and seeing them develop from someone that can't even throw to someone who can actually throw pretty good. And then they really like it and get into the event. It's worth more than everything else that I claim I'm missing.
It's about being who you truly are, that person within, and being able to nurture that in some way. Now, I know you've got some great views on just society at large, and I'd love to hear some of those. But before that, you talk about visualization. Do you have any other like mindset hacks that are just, obviously you've got the athletics, which is the discipline around your body, but any other 2 or 3 just like things that you do regularly to get your mind on track?
I just simply ask myself just a series of questions. First of all, I ask myself, do I really want what I'm doing? How am I going to get there? And does this serve me well? So, for example, if I am in a situation where I feel like the energy around me isn't very good, but I continue doing it, I take a moment, I say, is this serving me? Is there any point in me putting my energy into something, or having someone around in my life and all the rest of it? Because your environment and everything does have a massive influence on how you progress in your life. If you've got people around you, it may not be very easy, but sometimes you do need to make certain cuts because they're draining your energy. Like I've had to do that over the last couple of years now that I've found what I wanted to do, because before I had lots of troubles growing up, lots of different traumatic things. And over the last few years, I've been discovering what I really want to do and what really makes me happy. And I decided I wanted to be a writer. I worked in film, I did script writing, went to Cannes, did LA, did all that type of stuff. And I work every now and again in that type of area. And I decided I wanted to write books. I wrote a fictional book, and then that led me to being able to write these books very easily because I picked up all the various techniques and I just found it very easy. I can knock out 10, 15,000 words in a day. It's no problem. You know, once I've got my sort of drive behind it. So for me, it's just your environment. You need to make sure that it's correct. That goes from having a clear, tidy space at home, to the people that are coming in and out of your life, to the influencers and mentors that you look up to. These things are very, very important. Then you need to ask yourself the right types of questions at the right times. So you've got to be calm, make sure that your emotions are in check, and don't sort of knee jerk, and just actually try to think about what you're doing and what's actually possible. If you want to be something, you then break it down into small sections. Everyone can do a small section, and it builds up to a complete picture. So, I love that. So it's all about this. And this is all the stuff that I wrote in the book, but it's like, you just got to break everything down, just really break it down. Because when people see a big task, like I want to be an astronaut, for example, that's like, oh my God, most people look at that and be like, oh my God, that's crazy. But then you break it down. Okay, what do I need to be to become an astronaut? Okay, I need some sort of science degree. I need some sort of physics. So you go, okay, let me go into a course of physics. You do this, that, and the other. And as you're doing that, you then may find that you want to go into a different area because you've discovered something, you've become more aware. So it's just like Earl Nightingale's sort of definition of success is working towards a worthy ideal. So everybody is growing as long as you have actually got the idea in your head and you've made your first step. You have already become a success. You are already growing, and you need to be aware of that and just keep moving forward.
Lots of self-awareness and that growth mindset. You mentioned trauma briefly, and maybe some challenges that you've faced. Do you think some of those dark times sort of give you that drive as well?
Yeah, it does a lot, because I've come from pretty hard places, and it affects you in lots of different ways. There's a lot of self-reflection. There's a lot of times where you do the typical thing, why me, and all these types of questions. And these questions aren't very helpful to you because your head will often come up with quite a negative answer. You need to understand. And then
you're stuck, right?
Yeah, and then you're
stuck. There's nowhere to go from there.
Exactly. And then you go into a place of despair and you feel like this is your permanent state of mind. And the reality is, as long as you've got air in your lungs, you've got a chance. You can move forward. You can change something. It's just a moment. So, it took a long time for me to get to those points, and a lot of sort of self-reflection, because I was quite isolated in my sort of traumas. So I was just having to sort of really work all these things through as much as I possibly can, and just come up with things that you notice, and just really pay attention to everything. And, it took a long time. I wouldn't recommend anyone go through that process, but I went through that process, and I feel like I'm stronger for it at the other end. But it did get pretty low, and I could not have been here at some points, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it does get to that stage a lot of the time, because when you feel like there's just no answers and the hope's gone and you just can't see a way out of it, you do create this illusion in your mind that you're stuck. But then you need to...
let me just repeat that. You create an illusion in your mind that you're stuck.
Yeah.
And I relate to that. It's like you make up a story that because you can't see a way out, there is no way out.
Exactly. And this
right?
This is a cognitive distortion, which we were talking about. So what happens is you need to actually understand what these pains actually mean to you. When people get these sort of emotional pains or anything like this, they see it, they often sort of go along with it and actually compound the problem and actually go deeper and deeper, when in reality these signs of pain are for you to take action to change something. Okay, so if you're feeling emotionally in pain, it's your body saying, come on, snap out of it, time to do something else now, time to do something. That's what this is there for. And people don't really understand that. They just see it and then they just hold on to it and just fall down deeper and deeper and deeper. And really it's a warning sign. It's saying, hey, this is not a good mindset. Do something about it. Change your environment, change a person, change something, do something. And this is what a lot of people don't understand, and they need to, and this is why it's very good for people to read these types of books, to really become aware. And this is what leads into my sort of thoughts around education, because I just feel like as young kids, we need to actually make people aware of how their mind works, knowing the CBT, the NLPs, and all that type of stuff. You know, it really does help you, because what happens is lots of people get to our age or older and find it ourselves, but we've got so much baggage, it becomes a monumental task to unravel all of that stuff.
And we become reactionary. You talked about having your emotions in check. We just become one big trigger point. And we're controlled by external influences. Whereas all the mindset tools you're talking about are quite mindful. They're quite like, let me consciously ask myself a question and decide and be self-aware about my body, the information there, and who I want to be with that.
Exactly. You've got to be aware of, you've got to ask yourself, what do these things represent, and how are they representing me? Is this my identity? Is this who I want to be? And when you have an emotionally unstable sort of environment, or you become emotionally unstable, you just become reactionary to all sorts of things, and you do things that may not be representative of who you are. And then afterwards, you then feel the guilt of it when you've come down. Oh my God, I shouldn't have done this. And then that piles up on top of you. When in actual fact, you need to sort of take a moment, make sure that you base all of your decisions as much as possible on facts and not just illusions and things that you've made up in your mind. Because, because sometimes you get 2 add 2 and you come up with 5. Your brain as a mapping is a processing machine, and sometimes it gets it wrong. So what happens is you get used to certain tasks, and your brain makes an imprint of these certain tasks. So when something similar comes along, it just goes, okay, I assume it's that. And sometimes it's not. And that's how a lot of artificial intelligence, or primitive artificial intelligence, works in computing. It maps out a particular thing, and then when a similar task gets laid
based on the past, often.
And in your past experiences, when in reality each experience is relatively new. So you need to approach it in that way and actually take a step back, and then also understand where the other person's coming from, because everybody does something for a reason. If someone's reacted to you in a particular way, sometimes you need to reflect on yourself and go, okay, did I say something wrong here? Did I do something? Was my body language? It's a responsibility that both need to take.
Well, and without taking that responsibility, I think we can both kind of reflect that the world's in a pretty crazy place at the moment. We've just had Black Lives Matters protests, and we've had a lot of racial discussions. We've also, just within the pandemic, people are reflecting, they're scared, they're behaving in all sorts of ways, kind of out of fear. And so you said education is one of the ways to tackle that. And I imagine you don't just mean school, even though we should start young. But what are some other ways that we can just challenge for the sake of society?
Yeah, there's lots of different things. I mean, I've been reading, as you have, I've seen lots and lots of posts going on, lots of people with incredibly eloquent speeches, great, amazingly written articles, all that type of stuff. And I'm reading it, and it's all very personal, and it all matters. And I'm not trying to minimize any of that type of stuff, but I'm just thinking, when I looked at these things, I was thinking, okay, how did we get to this point in the first place? How did people start thinking like this in the first place? And I started to sort of strip it back, and then I'd look at my own sort of experiences within the Black community and see how I was responded to, because it hasn't always been nice, because there's lots of divisions within the Black community that you wouldn't obviously know of unless you're in it. Then this is why it's very difficult for us as a Black community to actually move forward a lot of the time, because there's lots of various different crazy
sort of in politics.
Yeah, there's a lot of in politics. In the UK, that, for example, there was always a big rivalry when I was growing up between African Black people and Caribbean Black people. All that type of stuff, cultural differences that you wouldn't ordinarily recognize and things like that. And I just feel like as the spotlight's on us, we need to take on this sort of message of being at peace with yourself before you can be at peace with others. So as a community, we need to actually be at peace with ourselves before we can actually move forward and become the community that we've all envisaged. And I feel like this is the types of things that are missing, because everyone's being very reactive. You got lots of extreme views out there, which is very dangerous in my opinion, because yes, you can get caught up in the emotions, and yes, lots of horrible things have happened that should never have happened. and I'm not condoning any of that type of stuff. But what happens is you run the risk of reacting and becoming just like the oppressors. So you start pointing the finger, and through trying to empower yourself, you're disempowering the other group, and then you're just basically swapping.
Then starts the cycle of abuse sort of continues.
Yeah, it's just that famous phrase, you can't fight hate with hate. It just doesn't work. So what happens is you then become very hypocritical as a group. And, you know, even within the sort of Black community, there's lots of issues between sort of sexuality. So lots of gay people are being ridiculed because of who they are. And again, that's a big hypocrisy, because you're just discriminating against them because of their sexuality. It's no different from you discriminating them because of skin color. It's the same sort of thing. It goes hand in hand. So you can't sort of be this reactionary, I don't believe, and this sort of thing unless you are at peace.
Like, you know, all change has to start with us.
Yeah, you need to understand that, you know, what you're doing, you're just repeating this behavior, and that's not the way forward. So it's like we're trying to get change within a system that doesn't actually promote the change or doesn't allow it to exist. So
no, but also it goes generations of like systemic subtle kind of cycles on both sides, right? And I'm curious about your opinion on how white people should be supporting change.
Well, the thing is, you know, it's one of these things where I just think we need to, as a community, as the Black community, as I said to you before, they need to actually become more unified. They need to actually sort out a lot of the problems that have come within. Some of it's not their fault necessarily, because they're in a system that doesn't really support them. And on the other side, they can take responsibility for a lot of other things, which they're trying to put on the shoulders of other groups. So it's just a mixture of those types of things, and they need to come together. And then through that, again, it's just education, experience, spending time with each other. Because that's what we run the risk of doing with these sort of things, with the Black Lives Matter movement and all the rest of it. You're creating a community, that's fine, to empower, it's fine. But then you get to a point where it becomes too insular, and then you create a group, and then it becomes very extreme, because within it, people are saying lots of really extreme things and really just pointing the finger. And then what happens is you develop this sort of extreme, sort of emotionally charged group, and then you become that thing, and it's just conflict. And then that's what, you know, of all these types of things going through my mind, and then I started to bring it back even further, and I'm looking at the capitalist system as a whole. How does that run? It runs through conflict. It runs through survival of the fittest. It doesn't actually promote unity at all. So is it ridiculous of us to want a loving, caring, respectful, empathetic society when a system that doesn't actually support that? It's a formula that doesn't allow it to live in the first place. Even look from our political system, everything all the way down. It's either you're A or B. And if you're not one or the other, you're against me. Boom.
Yeah, it's polarized.
And it's everything is set up like that.
And it's about money.
It's about money. It's all the economics. You know, you can, and then once you go even further back, you then look at the sort of basis of it, which is religion. You look at how religion's interpreted. You replace God with money, and you've got the capitalist system that people with more money, blah, blah, have a superiority complex. Everyone else is inferior. You're looking at the people in society in America, for example, the people at the top are often white people, and below the Black. So they've got that inferiority sort of thing, and so they don't matter anymore. They've devalued them as human beings, because once you start making someone inferior, you devalue them. And then once you do that,
which happens in the US with the Democrats and the Republicans, with the us and the them, and you know, and I don't know if you're familiar with Brené Brown's work, who talks about vulnerability and all of that. She says it's hard to hate up close. And you said, what can white people do? And what can, from all diverse ethnicities, how can we begin to solve? All change starts from within. How can we love instead of hate? But also lean into those relationships and actually just get curious, right?
Experience each other. That's what life's about. In my opinion, life's about experiences. You go out there and you have experiences. This is what makes you realize who you are, because it's that dichotic relationship. You don't know what hot is until you've experienced cold. So you don't know anything about yourself until you've actually experienced it. So when people come along and you see certain stories, you hear certain things, it actually tells you about yourself. So for example, if you see an advert on the TV about a starving person in the street, donate money, you can either be a person that says, oh, this is really terrible, I'm going to give money, or you can say, this doesn't matter to me at all. And then that experience tells you about yourself. So people need to actually go around and have these experiences, and then it will actually make them more aware of who they are, and then they can address the various problems that come about. And then that sort of ties into all the cognitive theory, cognitive distortion theories and things like that. You know, you just need to be more aware of how these things affect you, because a lot of
and your own responsibility.
A lot of racism is, for me, down to cognitive distortions. You know, they've had a particular experience, or they've been influenced by a particular person, which has then made them come up with an illusion about a particular group of people. And if you're aware of those sort of cognitive distortions, and you're aware of how your mind works in all these different ways, you'll be able to address it and say, okay, hold on a minute, I'm being unfair here. Let me base these on facts. Has this particular black person or white person or whoever it is done X, Y, Z? Or am I just painting with the same brush?
What I've heard as well. So challenge your own illusions, get on your own personal development journey. And I'm curious, I want to ask a couple final questions because we haven't got that much time left.
Okay.
But before I do, where can people find you if they're interested in the books?
I'm on Amazon. I'm on Instagram under Gavin Johnson, which is my middle name.
Okay.
On Instagram, you can find me there. Reach out, no problem. I'll always reply to everybody. And the books are on Amazon. The Little Book of Empowerment.
I love that.
Sorry, if you can get that there. Again, just reach out to me. I'd like to hear from everybody.
I think we've got to keep the debate going and connect on personal stories. We'll add all of that into the show notes, of course, so that people can find you. Yeah,
because there's lots of interesting literature out there, which I recommend people read, especially a guy called Neil Donald Walsh. He'd done a series of Conversations with God and Communion with God. Don't be put off by the title. It's not a super religious thing. It's actually quite anti-mainstream religion. And it teaches you a way of lots of different ways of looking at the world and the universe and how you interpret things. And this is what's really influenced me to come up with a theories about what's going on in society, coming back to religion, because when you look at how religion has been interpreted, it gives you a lot of illusions that were meant to give you an experience, but what we've done is we've taken these illusions as fact, and then it's created a bit of an ugly situation. So, for example, the concept of love is supposed to be all-encompassing, limitless, unconditional. But within our society and the way we do things, we have conditions on it. And you can't put conditions on something that is greater than what we understand, to be honest with you. And it's bigger, and that's where we get a lot of trouble. And then lots of different concepts like that come around, a lot of unconditional things that we've tried to put conditions on. And then that leads us to believe that things have a limit, that there isn't enough. And then once you get to that stage, you start to feel greedy.
That deficit.
You get that deficit, and then what's available, you get greedy for.
You get panicked.
Just like the toilet paper.
The fucking toilet paper.
Exactly.
The selfishness around that deficit, right? Like, there won't be enough. Oh my God, fear.
Exactly. And then once you get to that stage, you start to think there are requirements for things. Then you become condemned. You start to condemn people that don't meet those requirements. Then you put a judgment on them, and it just escalates.
And on yourself, you start living a conditioned life that isn't your fullest identity, which you were talking about at the beginning.
That's precisely it. So, this is just a complete brief thing, but I highly recommend you read that book. It gives you some real interesting insight into how things could be and how things need to change, and how we're doing things right now isn't really conducive for the goals that we're looking for.
Not at all. So we got to think bigger picture. Okay, here's a quick fire round. I just want to get your quick thoughts on a couple of things.
Sure.
Do you meditate?
No.
Fair enough. I feel like athletics is meditation. I'm just curious about high performers and things.
Yeah, I visualize my event, and I do that stuff. So I guess you can call it a meditation, but in terms of what you traditionally call meditation, sitting there in the pose, no.
You're an active meditator. It sounds like me. Who was your biggest influence in your life?
Biggest influence. There's a number of people, to put it. There's
top three.
Okay, top three. So I would say my Uncle Brian. Then I would probably say the Incredible Hulk. He's a great character,
obviously,
of course. Yes. And then for terms of athletics, Daley Thompson. he was a very big influence for me, because at the time there wasn't many people that were mixed race doing incredible things in sport, and he was winning everything that he touched basically, and he was very charismatic, handsome, tall, everything that you would ever want to
You could
aspire
aspire to, yeah.
Yeah, so he was a very big influence for me.
What was the influence your uncle had? What was the impact there?
He was just very charismatic again, and he was very big and muscular. Now I'm like twice the size of him, but at the time he was like a massive guy, and he was very much into his training, and I was very focused on that type of stuff. I wanted to be big and strong and muscly, and that was like my main sort of goals when I was 7, 8, 9.
Yeah,
so,
so okay, when you were, I'm just making these up, but they're just because I'm interested. When you were at your lowest point, you said there were times when you thought maybe you weren't going to be here. Your lowest point. Did you ask for help? And like, as a strong man, often there's like this idea that a strong man should show no weakness. And I know you had the breakdown with the coach, but that was how you were pushed to your limits. I don't know. Did you ask for help?
No, not necessarily. It was more of a divine intervention, to be honest with you. What happened was I was, by myself, just completely distraught, and a phone call came in from my father at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was really like I was so close to just being like, forget this. But he called because I didn't grow up with him, so he called out of pretty much nowhere in a way, and he basically told me that my youngest brother really looks up to me, and he really did it. And then all of a sudden, that was it. I just couldn't do it, and it just, from then on, I just sort of just kept on rising, and I just kept on coming through, because I just thought to myself, if any one of my youngest brothers went through the same things and decided to do that, it would just rip me to pieces, and I can't do that to them.
Does your father know that it was that close?
No, nobody knows. Well, now everyone's gonna know.
Oh, everyone's gonna know.
but it was a very personal sort of thing, and I just thought, you know what, I've come this far. I'm a fighter. I can do this. And I just decided to turn things around. And that.
I love that. So, and I love that because I relate to just those serendipitous moments that can catch us out. Did he ever say why it was 3 a.m. that he called you, or just?
Because he's over in America, so
he's overseas.
So it was just a 3 a.m. He was probably 10 o'clock at night, and he just wanted to speak to me because there was an incident that was before that. So we were in sort of a bit of conversation. So he was just checking up on me, and yeah, it was quite timely call. So I'm guessing there's something greater for me to do, and there's a reason why I've got all of these talents, I guess. So I'm trying to maximize them as much as possible and help as many people as I can.
So after that, I feel like my last question is stupid. I feel like we just need to mic drop. We need a mic drop there. It was about productivity, but I guess maybe let's just end on this one. What 2 pieces of advice would you give to your younger self? So the kid who's like trying, and he's got some fails and some wins and some like, what's the 2 bits of advice you would give?
It's very difficult. I think what you'd need to do is I would first say you need to change your environment and the people that you're hanging around with, and the sort of influences and things that you're believing in, because they're not quite right. And secondly, that you can do more than what people are saying about you, because I had lots of people saying you couldn't do this, what's the point in that, and it was always dragging me down, and just being a very bad influence on me. And then when I got to my point where I was at breaking point, I thought, well, I have nothing to lose, so I'm going to just do it. And at every step of the way, the people that you need just come into your life. You just attract it. When you decide to do something positive, the right people just turn up out of nowhere. It seems like out of nowhere, but whatever it is, whatever you believe in, life, energy, God, universe, whatever, something just lands on your plate. You hear a song and it just triggers an idea. You watch a TV program and all of a sudden it's talking about the subject that you were thinking about. You've just got to be aware. Just open your ears, open your eyes, and just make sure that you're ready to receive any messages that are out there.
I love that. So listen for the messages and the opportunities, but also don't believe everything that people say. You don't have to believe the haters, and you don't even have to believe that voice in your own head. It's just a voice. Yeah,
because the people that are doing that, they're just sort of putting their own limitations on you. And we're different people, we're different things. What you're capable of and what I'm capable of, 2 different things, but people tend to sort of can't really find that separation and be objective and say, okay, this guy is clearly putting his own limitations on me.
I love this. So be love and let go of the limitations. Gavin, thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like we're going to have you on again when we're back out of
sure. I'd love to.
pandemic and figure it out. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Thank you for having me.